Hello, y'all, and welcome back to Set Apart, this week's Morning Manna devotional series that highlights key biblical figures and their stories that led them to be set apart for God's purposes. Now, yesterday we focused on Moses, and we talked about how often we don't feel ready to walk into the calling that God has in our lives. But we must remember that God prepares us along the way. All we have to do is go. Today, I want to focus on another mighty man of God, Joseph. I want to start off with a question. Why do bad things happen to good people? We as believers try our best to reflect Christ, but sometimes bad things can still happen, and we can find ourselves in circumstances that are unjust and seemingly hopeless. Maybe the story of Joseph can shed some light on the answer. Joseph was born under the favorable conditions of being the apple of his father's eye, meaning that he was his father's favorite. I'm sure you know the story. Joseph's brothers sell him into slavery because they're jealous of Joseph. They mislead their father into thinking that Joseph is dead so that no one will go looking for him. So Joseph, as a young man, finds himself in a horrible position. He's alone in Egypt as a slave, and it was his family that put him there. What a horrible turn of events for this innocent boy. Eventually, he works his way from being a slave to being in a powerful position working for an Egyptian official named Potiphar. Unfortunately, Potiphar's wife, after trying to solicit Joseph into a relationship, has him thrown in jail after Joseph refuses her advances. Things just go from bad to worse for Joseph. He was a young man with incredible promise, but now he's walking down a lonely road, abandoned and betrayed, framed and unjustly persecuted. God seems to have abandoned Joseph. While all of this is happening, Joseph's father and brothers are starving in the land of Canaan, and throughout the rest of the known world, a famine is quickly eliminating all the food so that everyone is forced to head to Egypt to get reprovisioned. This is the part of the story that I want to highlight. Joseph eventually is vindicated by God, and then he is placed as the governor of all of Egypt. Joseph's brothers are advised by their father Israel to head to Egypt to get food. Unbeknownst to them, their brother Joseph controls who gets food and who does not. And when they arrive, they don't recognize Joseph. At first, when approached by his brothers, Joseph was harsh with them, still bitter and hurt by their betrayal, but soon he could not take the pain of unforgiveness anymore. Joseph revealed himself to his brothers and said in Genesis 45, 4-8, "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt, and now do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now there has been famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will be no plowing and no reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So then, it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me father to Pharaoh, lord of his entire household, and ruler of all Egypt." What an incredible turnaround. He could have easily condemned his family for what they did, but Joseph didn't. He recognized that God set him apart to go on ahead of his family to Egypt to make a way for them so that they didn't get destroyed by this famine. My point in highlighting this story is that sometimes life takes us down lonely roads. We can feel alone, helpless, and cut off. And there doesn't seem to be anything that could redeem this time for us, but God is always working. Joseph's story is one of forgiveness and redemption. It was only when Joseph finished his walk down that lonely road that he realized what it was all for: salvation. He was called to save his family, and in order to do that, Joseph had to take the road less traveled, a tough road, only made for those set apart to do great things. You're called to be set apart, and sometimes that path can be quite difficult. You can feel isolated, cut off, and helpless, but you're in that position so that when you get on the other side of it, you can help others who are walking that path but haven't gotten through it yet. Sometimes being set apart means you walk those roads first, then you can help others during their walk. God bless you, and I'll see you tomorrow.